Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano, and, well, I want to discuss something about the show going forward. There's going to be some changes. It's not going to be anything too major, but I do want to try something different going forward. But first, let's maybe do the opening message. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. When it comes to these episodes, I tend to watch whatever I'm talking about, record myself talking about it, usually it's unscripted, and then from there work on it for a few days, get it ready for a show, and then it goes up. I usually do these ahead of time just so I can constantly churn out weekly episodes, but the problem is I've not loved the quality enough to keep on doing it that way. Now, I'm not going to change too much of this. Sorry, I got a lot of barking. Now, I'm not going to change too much of this, but I do want to change things up a bit. Now, I'm still going to do the recording where it's not a prepared written statement, just because I do want this to be mostly just me and whoever I get as a guest reacting to whatever we're talking about. But I do want to start including things like more clips, more footage, pretty much stuff to kind of break it up a little bit more, make it a little nicer. And along the way, for some of these, not for this episode, I don't think, along the way, I'm planning to start including more scripted stuff, just to support anything where I might have forgotten a thing or two. I've tried doing that before, but I never really stuck to it. I think I'm going to stick to that now, because I want these episodes to feel a bit better, which means that there's no guarantee that these episodes are going to be going up every week anymore going forward. I will try to get it to where, I get it done as soon as I can, but if certain episodes take a little longer, they'll go up when they go up. I'll try to keep it within the same days in terms of the podcast version and the video version. So if I get a video done, say on Friday, it won't go up until pretty much Monday night or going into Tuesday as a podcast, and then the video goes up right after that. And the main reason being is just that I want to have more of an effort going into this going forward, just because with some of these I do feel like, okay, I'm just doing it just because I need to fill in a time slot, and it's become more draining than it is actually fulfilling. I'll still occasionally do the ones where I'm talking about shows or episodes or just general ideas, but I am going to try to be more selective on that. I want to go back to just doing movies on a more regular basis. And like I said, it's just going to be more focused on trying to make it a little nicer, make it a little better, give you more to actually enjoy. So sometimes some of these episodes might not be ready within 2 weeks. Hopefully that's as long as it takes, but sometimes it might be longer. Who knows? The goal is to just make it better, give it more effort, and hopefully improve what I am already offering you. As a result, I can't guarantee that this show will be having regular episodes for the coming future. I am planning to go on a little bit of a holiday break, just to work on some other stuff. And that's the other reason why I want to do this, is just so I can work on other stuff. And I just want to have these episodes come out as I make them, instead of having them all bunched up, to have them, ready to go for after a while. Just because, again, while it is nice to have a bunch of episodes ready to go, it is kind of draining, and I don't know, I just feel like I've already done enough, where if I take a while to get into, I could always recommend you guys to just go back to watch my original episodes, and who knows, maybe you guys could even suggest episodes that I should redo with more insight. I don't know. But that's just what I wanted to announce. For this episode, I am going to be talking about another animated film. I do think it's going to be more of a simple episode, just because I wanted to get this started with something a bit easier, see how I feel about it as I do it. And that is
Bebe's Kids.
Now, a lot of you probably don't know what Bebe's Kids is, and that's understandable. Mainly, I got into it Well, not get into it, but I learned what it was. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like admitting that I used to watch this. I watched the Nostalgia Critic. It's a thing that got me into a lot of online stuff. Not really a big fan of his stuff anymore. I know there was a whole controversy with the way he handled his work. I'm not gonna get into that because that is not important to this show. All I can say is that what he did was wrong. I don't know if it's anything where it's like the people who were affected by it definitely deserve to call him out for as long as they want. If you were not affected by it, I mean, you can feel like he's an awful human being for that. I understand. I don't think you need to go on this whole constant tirade attacking him because there's so many awful people in the industry that, not to say that it's excusable, but what I'm saying is that I've seen worse people do worse things, and as a result, just don't want to get into it. But yeah, let's get into this Bebe's Kids. It's an animated feature from the 90s. Not very memorable, and you can see why. That being said, it is an interesting one because it is much more mature than what you would normally expect from, I want to say, family features, because it kind of is a family feature, but there is a lot of language in this, and the way the characters talk is just like, this is very mature, even for its time, I feel like, because it's dealing with real people, and I don't want to say it's dealing with real issues, but they do kind of make jokes about stuff, because the whole movie is based upon the stand-up of a comedian, guy named Robin Harris. Not familiar with his work, but apparently he passed away before this came out. And for the most part, the whole thing is just like, okay, this is kind of based on his stand-up on these group of kids that he dealt with, that named themselves Bebe's Kids, because, the mother's Bebe. The whole movie is pretty much like, hey, look, here's this animated retelling of this. Robin Harris character, not voiced by himself. You do see his stand-up at the start of it. It's kind of awkwardly edited in. I don't know if that's a matter of this not being properly restored or anything, but it just sounded off. Point being is that he's voiced by another actor, Faison Love. Pretty much it's just him at a bar. He's retelling what exactly led him to it. He was dating this woman that he met, had a son. Well, she had a son, not him. And when he came in to take her on a date with the kid to this theme park, it turns out that she was also babysitting the kids of a friend of hers. Hence, the trio of kids we know as Bebe's Kids. Now, this is primarily made up of a cast of African-American characters and actors. This is a movie that was directed by Bruce Smith, who, if you're not familiar with his work, he created he created the Proud Family, and he's been designing for a lot of stuff over the years, a lot of stuff with Disney. He was responsible for the design for Dr. Facilier, for The Princess and the Frog. So he's been in the industry for years, and this was his big directorial effort. And for what it's worth, I will say this much. The movie is very nicely animated. You can tell that this is from the guy that would end up doing the Proud Family. The characters are very expressive, the animation is nice and smooth, and it's very funny. Like, it's kind of Looney Tunes-esque at times with the way the characters react, but it's still kind of grounded in a way. It's very nice to look at, and I would recommend the movie entirely on those merits. Now, on to the story aspect, though, we'll get to it. But for now, I will say that the animation in this is very nice. The color is very nice, even though it clearly has not been taken care of, just because this is a movie that wasn't a big hit. So obviously, studios have not focused on, restoring it all that much, which is kind of sad. I wish more movies would get the effort, even if they weren't well beloved, to be properly restored. I saw this on YouTube. It was one of the free with ads movies, so obviously there was not going to be much quality to it in terms of how it looked, because I feel like a lot of those movies are usually, I don't know, they sometimes do have stuff that, are properly taken care of, but there's a lot of stuff that, it's just studios that just ignore them. And that's kind of where this lands, unfortunately, because it is a very nice movie to look at, even though it's clearly in need of being touched up. Regardless of that, I do think the voice work in this movie is nice. I do think the general plot of this movie, I mean, it's a very short movie. It's only like an hour and 10 minutes. You know, it's very much just a simple thing, and it works on those levels. It just, the writing on it can be a bit weird. Like, you know, like the comedy, I think, is well done when it comes to dialogue, but there's musical segments that just don't really land, and those could have been dropped in favor of adding more stuff to the characters. Like I said, the story, well, I don't know how to put this. Messy. Now, I don't mind a simple plot. This is pretty much just, hey, guy takes out this girl on a date, she has a kid, so he of course tries to accommodate it based on that, and it turns out that there's even more kids that he has to take care of because she's babysitting a friend. And from that, I'm like, okay, that's a genuinely nice enough plot. I don't really mind the kids doing a lot of shenanigans because that's kid stuff, and that's fine. And in fact, I like the fact that it is a slice of life movie. The problem is, and this is going beyond just the musical stuff not really working, the problem is that it's like, okay, so we're supposed to get this idea that Robin is going to impress the woman he's with by showing he can be a good father. And there is some bits of that where he tries to talk with her son and teach him like the value of standing up for himself. But for the most part, it's so far and few in between the movie that it never really lands all that much. And I don't even mind that, you know, towards the end of the movie, he even... it goes on this whole joke thing where he pretty much is completely fed up with the kids doing this big pirate boat hijacking thing that he just runs off, and it, you know, it's a very funny sequence. You know, I'll say that much. But I wish that the movie would have given a few more moments of him trying to be a good father and not just, you know, being mad at these kids. Like, even with Bebe's kids, especially because by the end of the movie, you know, when he realizes, like, oh, wow, you know, these kids are in this bad situation, and we kind of get this, you know, new side to the kids where we kind of realize, like, oh, okay, so they do enjoy Robin's presence, even though they are, you know, troublemakers. You know, it doesn't land as well just because it's like, I mean, how's it going to land so well when you barely had any scenes of them actually interacting well with each other? And I do think like a scene or two showing that, you know, he can play along with them would have been nice, even if it still had some of those scenes where they're essentially ruining the day. But that kind of stuff is mostly left, you know, like ignored. Like, you know, it's just, hey, here's the shenanigans. We get this whole subplot where Robin runs into an ex of his, and, you know, that stuff is fine. I don't think they necessarily needed a whole lot more on it, but it still feels like, okay, you needed at least the stuff where it shows that he's more of a good man towards the kids throughout this to really make that land, especially because he had the, you know, his date basically standing up for him, and it just feel like, yeah, it would have been much better if, you know, you had gotten that little moment before, just so it's like, okay, yeah, that's a big thing. And you didn't even have to sacrifice the humor for that. Like, I still do think it's funny that every time, like, you know, you see cops or other people encountering Bebe's kids, they're freaking out because it's like, oh, wow, the legend of these monstrous kids has gone all over the place, that people are afraid to deal with them. But you still should have had Robin essentially being somewhat of a good dad to them. Even if he wasn't perfect. Like, you know, it's kind of like that whole thing with, like, you know, if you look at, like, the good stuff with The Simpsons, where, you know, you remember that Homer is a good parent by having him actually, you know, be a good father to Bart and Lisa, even when he's kind of an idiot. You know, it's the sitcom thing, I guess, is more like it, just because there's a lot of sitcoms where, you know, like the better ones where they do this, and then there's the bad ones where they forget about it. And even with, like, The Simpsons or, like, Family Guy, like, on their worst instances, sometimes it's, you know, for a good joke, and I understand, but if you really want it to land, it's usually best when you still remember, hey, these are still good people at their very core. I think that was what was missing from this specific movie. And it's a shame because otherwise I think it's something where I would recommend. I do think, I mean, I'll still recommend it regardless just for the animation. Like if you're an animation fan, definitely go check it out. If you're, I don't know, I feel like for people, you know, who non-white people, especially black people, but I feel like even, you know, other non-white people, minorities will latch onto this because it's just so different from the usual stuff that you would get from, yeah, I mean, even now really, but especially back then when it comes to animated features where, you know, shows like an actual personality, the adults are actually acting like adults, and it actually just feels like, hey, look, this is reflective of people from the backgrounds that you don't normally get to see in these kinds of movies. Live action equivalent to a lot of them would have been like, you know, like the, you know, hey, here's the adult who's dealing with the kids, and it's always like the wacky shenanigans, and it's made up of situations that no one really relates to. Like they'll either just do it like, oh, it's the rich white kids who are, you know, with their babysitter or whatever. Like, you know, it never feels like a natural thing. And not to say that all of those movies are bad. I mean, I like some of those goofy stuff, but that's one thing that gives Bebe's Kids an edge in regards to that kind of stuff. It's just that since it is telling it from the perspective of a guy who comes from a messier background, it just feels more honest, and I really appreciated it on that front. But yeah, it's still a fun movie. The animation's nice. Bruce Smith clearly shows, you know, how much of a talent he is, and how much he really deserves to do more. The biggest thing he's done after this was, of course, the Proud Family, and I feel like I would like to see them give him another animated feature to direct someday. Especially because it'd be nice to see some more personal stories like that coming from someone who clearly isn't the common, you know, group that you see in these movies. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Not much else I could really say. The only thing I could really want to talk about is going back to what I started with, which with going forward, how I'm going to be changing it. Like I said, I don't expect every episode to come out every week. I will have gaps between them, and I do want to put more effort in these, so I do want to make it feel more like I'm trying to talk about this stuff. Who knows? I've been wanting for the longest time to have regular guests, and if you guys want me to talk to someone, if you guys want me to have someone over or anything like that, I would love to hear it out and see what I can do. And more importantly, who knows, maybe someday I will have a co-host to this show, really make things much more interesting than they already are. As is, I just want to thank every one of you who still follows me, still watches me, and I hope you continue watching me in the future. Thank you.
It's animation. Rated PG-13.
Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like, and comment. Ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/saicams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.